Roger, what's up, man? Welcome to Dad
What's
Edge.
up? Yeah, thanks for having me, brother.
It's good to see you, man. I feel like I was watching you on TV for, gosh, man, it was like years, and here we are talking to each other.
Yeah, man, that whole ride started about 10 years ago, man. It was about 8 years of my life, I guess. So yeah. But it has come to a finale for me anyway.
Yeah, and before we even get started, like on your childhood and stuff like that, I mean, did you ever think, like in your early 20s or anything like that, you'd be like, yeah, I think I'm going to be known for a reality TV star? Did you ever think that would be a thing?
Not for even a momentary second did I ever think. I certainly would have never tried out for a show like that or anything. And that's not disparaging in any way or saying anything negative. It's just, I don't know. I was just a kid from Maine that moved to Jersey. I always, I just felt like, the real Guidos weren't me. I was a kid from Maine, you know what I mean? So, no, I never would have tried out for it. I don't think my anxiety would have let me do it anyway. I got too anxious in situations like that when you shove a camera in my face, but it just kind of happened organically. It kind of happened naturally, so I just rolled with it.
Yeah. And just remind me, I honestly, I mean, it's been like years since I've watched Jersey Shore. I honestly can't remember where you actually came into the mix.
It's funny, man, because most people don't. Most people remember me coming on the scene in season 3. I refer to everything in seasons. But season 1, I actually met my ex. Season 1, we met briefly. I think there's like a little glimpse of me on season 1, but we met, kind of the seed was planted. We hung out a little bit at Karma. And I walked her home. We got cheese balls at Seaside Tony's on the way home. We got a cheesesteak, and I walked her home, and that was pretty much it. But it kind of planted a little seed. I was in her head. She was in my head. And then they came back season 3, and that's where we kind of reunited. I walked in the club, and there she was again, because they did Florida. They did Miami for season 2, and then it just kind of took off from there. And then before you knew it, we were dating, and 2 kids later, and a marriage, and a divorce. And yeah, so it was a whirlwind affair. But
now that you mentioned that, I do kind of remember like her meeting you in Karma. So that's funny. And then, I do remember the season in Miami. And I guess you did reappear in season 3.
Yeah.
Did you guys actually talk between season 1 and season 3 at all?
A little bit. It's weird because during filming, they're not allowed to have cell phones, no email access, no TVs in the house, not even pen and paper. So they remove all that they take that all away from them because they want all the interaction being personable. You know what I mean? So I couldn't while she was filming. So during that season 1, when I met her, I never spoke to her again until the season ended. And then we talked a little bit, but she had a boyfriend at the time. She was living with a boyfriend, and then they did Miami, and then I couldn't talk to her when she was in Miami. And then the show, just the success took off. Like season 1 hit shortly after or shortly before they went to Miami, and the show just took off. So they rolled season 2 right into season 3. They literally left Miami and came right back to Seaside and started filming season 3. And that's where I'm a local. I live right in Toms River. So I'm always over there with my friends. I happened to walk into Karma, and I saw all the, first thing you see is all the lights from the cameras and everything. I was like, oh shit, they're back, and then in my head, I'm kind of like, I wonder if she's back. And sure enough, I walk in and we made eye contact and we were talking, and before you know it, we were hanging out, and bye-bye old boyfriend, hello new boyfriend,
And excuse me, I totally forgot about that. I totally forgot that she was actually seeing somebody, and then she was kind of talking. So you're bringing me back to that. That's funny, man. That is super cool. Yeah. So let's start with this. I know you grew up in Maine. You actually grew up in a small town, right?
Very small.
Yeah. So tell me about.
When people ask me where I'm from, generally I say Bar Harbor because most people have heard of it. Acadia National Park, Cadillac Mountain. That's like a region that people would have heard of. Because Maine is pretty sparse. I could name 100 towns in Maine, and other than maybe like Portland, Bangor, and Bar Harbor, you would have never heard of anyone. I grew up in a little town called Cherryfield, population of under 1,000 people, still to this day. I've been in Jersey 23 years, and I don't think the population has increased more than a few people. It's a no-growth state. They don't really promote growth. My town looks exactly like it did when I left. Very small town. I love my town. I love Cherryfield. Love where I grew up, but the winters are long up there. So I left when I was, if you wanted me to give you the full story, my mother's originally from Glen Rock, New Jersey, northern Jersey. And she met my dad in Connecticut. They worked at Pratt & Whitney together. My dad was an engineer there, and they moved back to Maine. Well, my dad will tell you can't bring a Jersey girl to Maine because she'll never make it because the winters are just so brutal and long up there. So they were married about 25 years, and then they separated when my sister and I were in high school. I think I was 17. My sister was 18. My mom relocated back to Jersey, to Toms River. My sister followed shortly after. She had a daughter. She was in the Army Reserves, met a guy in the reserves that she was in. They had a daughter together, and I came down to visit my niece, and I basically never left. That was 23 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. So it was just you and your sister growing up then too, right?
That's it. Yep.
And they separated when you guys were 17, 18?
17 and 18. Yep.
Yeah. So what's the relationship look like now between your parents? I mean, obviously, are they completely divorced?
Yeah. Oh yeah. My mom actually lives in Mexico, not New Mexico, Mexico, the country, if you can believe that. She moved to Florida. When they left Jersey, maybe like 12 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. They built a house on the west coast of Florida in Fort Myers. They lived there on the quiet coast. They lived there for about 10 years, really enjoyed it. And then they just wanted something different. So they kind of toyed around a bunch of different ideas. They toyed around St. Thomas, St. Martin. They toyed around buying a big RV and touring the country. Somehow somebody told them about a place in Mexico, and they went and visited and rented a house there for about 6 months and fell in love with it. And then they bought a house there. So now they're still American citizens, but they're Mexican residents. So they've been in Mexico for about 6 months. About 3 years. And yeah, my mom and my dad's relationship is good. I mean, they don't talk often because they don't need to, but they're good. You know, there's no ill will there. My sister and I are both close with both parents. Sometimes it's a little tough to get in touch with my mom because the service in Mexico isn't always so great, but no.
Maybe she just needs one of those duck phones.
Yeah. They always seem to work, right?
They
no matter
do.
how hard you slammed it, it always worked the next day.
Yeah, exactly, man. So what's the relationship with your dad like with the both of you guys?
I'm really tight with my dad.
Cool.
And my dad's what they call you a down Easter if you're from my area. It's called Down East Maine. It's like that coastal lobster fishing region right on the shoreline in Maine. And my dad is the epitome of a down Easter. He'll never leave that little town. He loves it. He goes out to, we have a cabin on a lake, and he drives out there every day, and he starts a fire at night. He does these things on Facebook called campfire chats, where he just sits by a fire at like 10 o'clock at night. He's 73 years old. He's had a quadruple bypass, and he just sits out there and he'll write a little rant about life. He's very godly. He's a religious man, and he'll usually have some overtones of just goodness to it, and morality and family, and he just puts it out there, and that's what he likes to do. So yeah, we're very close. Usually sends me some Bible verse almost every morning. I'll get a Bible verse from him texted to me. So yeah.
Man, dude, that's amazing.
Yeah.
First of all, my dad and your dad, they're the same age. Okay. My dad, same thing, very optimistic about life and that kind of. I actually didn't meet my dad till I was 30, which is kind of a whole nother story. But he's in a good space, mentally and emotionally. My grandfather was 73 when he passed away, and my grandfather, literally the best guy in my life, the best man in my life, as far as like growing up and that father figure and that. But towards those final years, man, like he was like, oh, this country's going to hell. Like if he saw what was going on right now, he'd be flipping out. So it's so cool that your dad, 73 years old, makes this fire every night, tries to put some good back into the world. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. No matter what's happening or how bad it gets. And we were just talking a little bit before the show. If you watch the news, I mean, it'll put you in a place of depression. It's just so overwhelming with what's going on. But no matter how bad it gets, he always says, put it in God's hands. Just put it in God's hands, So yeah, he's a very spiritual guy. And it's funny because growing up, we always went to church on Sunday, but I wouldn't consider him to be, like a holy roller, or he was never preaching the Bible. But, as he's gotten older, he's quite deep with it. Man,
that's really cool. What was it like, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old into teenage years? What was your relationship with him like as a kid?
My relationship with my dad was always super great. So typically in most families, you have the disciplinarian. My mom was always the disciplinarian. My mom ruled with an iron fist. She'd be the one to yell. She'd be the one to lay down the law. She'd be the one to put the, whatever punishment was coming your way. She was the one to do it. My dad was more soft-spoken, didn't raise his voice often, didn't really punish us. He was kind of more like, go see your mother. You know what I mean? But my dad was building a business when I was growing up. When I was a kid, he took over a really small family business, oil company, was a one truck operation. My dad took it over when they moved back from Connecticut, from my dad and my mom, actually. My grandmother ran the little booking office part of it out of the garage of the house. And my grandfather and my uncle, Everett, they had a Gulf oil truck. They called it a jobber truck. You could kind of like lease a truck from Gulf at the time. And I mean, this is going back to the 50s. I think it started in 54 or 55. And so, yeah, they did that. And then my dad saw something there and wanted to build it, came back from Pratt & Whitney and built it into quite a successful business. But it took up a lot of his time. He was out a lot of late nights working, but he always came home for dinner. Didn't matter, 6 o'clock or 5:30, whatever time dinner was on, he was there. He might go back out after and work on furnaces all night, or try to, a house might be frozen up and you'd have to go deliver oil to it and get it. But he was a hardworking guy, still is to this day. Doesn't really have to work, but likes to work, like he'll find something, he'll split wood, or he still has some businesses going on up there. So like today he was in the office doing paperwork and stuff, but he'll work till the day he dies. It's just ingrained in him,
And your dad and my dad sound almost identical. Like my dad, he's owned his own business for 40 years. He could sell it and stop working, but he loves it. But that's really cool, man.
Yeah.
Growing up, let's steal from your dad a little bit, right? Let's steal some good things. What were some things that growing up, maybe you didn't appreciate at the time, but looking back on it, your father too, you got a son and a daughter, like you're like, man, like that was gold with that man.
Yeah.
Is there anything come to mind?
I mean, he said a lot of things over the years. I mean, there's one quote that kind of rings true that he says, and I actually use it once in a while. He says, when you talk about getting older, he always says there's a lot of things. There's nothing you can do on this earth to extend your time on this earth, but there's a whole lot of things you can do to shorten it. You know what I mean? And I always thought that made sense, and he was kind of talking about me taking risk. I was crazy on motorcycles and I used to ride, and he always kind of instilled that in me, that God's only going to give you so long. It's up to you if you want to shorten that time on this planet Earth. You certainly can do a lot of things to attribute to that, but you only get so much time, So taught me, there's a lot of things, he always, I remember growing up, he always taught me about the value of money and how if you couldn't pay for something with what you had, you probably didn't deserve it and shouldn't buy it. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a foregone conclusion for most people, because almost all of us need to go buy a car finance it, or when you buy a house. So as I got older, I realized that there are things you're not going to get. Most people can't pay cash for a house. Most people can't pay cash for a car. But the general concept, that general idea that if you're spending more than you have, you probably shouldn't be buying it. And that doesn't go for everything, as I said, like a house and stuff. But, if you want $400 designer jeans and you're making $500 a week, that's probably not a good investment. It's probably not a good idea, So, and he always instilled that in me. So,
Yeah, man, you're preaching to the choir, because I can't remember the latest statistics, but I think it's the average 50-year-old has less than $50,000 in their retirement, which is super scary. I mean, because they're going to be dependent on the system, right?
Right.
That's
I saw a commercial the other day. I forget the stats, but it was an incredibly high percentage. And it said most people, whatever the percentage was, do not have a spare $500 for a breakdown to spend, no
emergency fund.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's scary stuff, man. We're in our house, we're really open with the kids about money. They know exactly. I mean, we got 4 boys, and all of them, except for the 4-year-old, they know exactly what we bring in, what our bills are, what our mortgages, what we save, and we teach them the same. And even my finance guy, every quarterly meeting that I have, I bring my 2 oldest with me, so they can ask questions. They have their own custodial accounts where they invest in the market, and we require them with their allowance. You got to put a certain amount aside every single month, and they do it.
That's great.
But yeah, it's like that financial literacy, man. So many of us don't grow up with that.
It is. Credit scores a lot nowadays. You know what I mean? You can almost judge somebody's life decisions based on their credit score. And that's not to be, I should say that in more fairness. Some people are not taught the value of money, and then so it's really kind of not their fault. But good decision making goes a long ways, and you should think about what you do spend your money on. And I see a lot of people that will drive a $200 beater car, but they'll get out of the car and they got designer everything on it. I never got that concept,
Yeah, I guess everybody's got to spend their money somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not hating. It's up to you how you want to do it, but my dad would never let me get away with that,
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I just took my 14-year-old to the Verizon store because he got a phone last year, and he's eligible for an upgrade if he's willing to pay off the balance on his phone. So we went in there, and he saves his money. He's a saver. And we went in there, and they're like, okay, it's going to be $168 for you to get a new phone. But you're also going to have to pay for, there's a $40 processing fee, which is BS. Yeah. And then you got to get a new case, a new screen protector. You're probably going to walk out of here paying about $275. And I looked at him and I was like, what do you want to do? It's your money. And he's like, oh man, like I don't know. Like I could wait till August and get it for free. I was like, yeah, you got to make it. And he decided to postpone the decision, which I thought was awesome, because I was like, listen, man, I was like, you delayed gratification to think it over. I was like, you didn't just dive in and get the shiny new thing. Like, that's great. Like, take your time and think about it. So, and I think a lot of us don't do that.
Well, like you said, there's instant gratification, which a lot of people want. And I guess there's sort of two schools of thought on that. You got the YOLO expression. You only live once. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. And some people just want to live for the day. I wasn't brought up thinking that way. I try to plan for a future. But I'm not going to give anybody grief if that's the way they want to live your life. But I tend to raise my kids more the way you raise them. You know what I mean? I want them to think about their future and have a future and plan for the future and save for the future, So
yeah, exactly, man. And just even like just that simple tweak that your dad taught you.
Yeah.
Just sometimes you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a crash course on financial literacy. It could just be like, hey, keep in mind these three things as you go through life.
My best friend often uses the quote, money is evil. And I don't know that I 1000% agree with that sentiment, but generally speaking, money is absolutely evil if you let it be. It absolutely is. If you let it be, it can't. And for many, a lot of people do. And I try to not let it be evil. He's got the greatest concept of it because he's had money. He's had money. He's not had money. He's come back into money. He makes money, but he's my best friend, and he says it all the time. He just says it blatantly. It's not. There's no. I kind of give outs, and he's just like, no, money is evil, and it's all about perspective. Life is all about perspective. Any angle you want to look at it, it's perspective.
Yeah, let me throw this quote to you, and I'm sure you've heard this, that money will, I can't remember the word, but it's basically will exacerbate whatever personality you have. So if you're an ass, it's going to make you more of one. But if you're generous and constantly thinking of others and that kind of thing, it's going to exacerbate that.
Right.
So what do you think of that?
No, I think I think that can happen. Unfortunately, people that don't have money, that come into money quickly, most of them never got a crash course in it, and it's sort of, especially if it happens at a young age, Jersey Shore would be a good example. People went both ways with that. People came into money really quickly, and some people made bad decisions, and some people made wise investment decisions. And, it's sort of, I think it's timing, like if you come into it at a young age where you haven't had some life experience, it's tough to judge somebody because none of us know what we do. It happens to so many professional athletes. You sign huge contracts right out of college, and some people do really well with it and other people don't, and I just think it depends on your perspective at that time,
Yeah. I think of legends like Mike Tyson and MC Hammer, who were worth millions and then just spent it all.
Well, those were guys, and I'm sure they could make the argument that they were trying to pay it forward. Mm-hmm. They had huge entourages. They wanted to take care of the people that they thought cared about them. Now it's, again, it's questionable. Did those people really care about them, or they just along for the ride and to enjoy the fame and notoriety and the money? I would say that the people that stuck around after they didn't have it anymore would be the ones who really cared about them, and typically speaking, those friends are few and far between.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. And speaking of, kids and life lessons and all that, you have two. You've got a son and a daughter. Tell us about your kids.
Yeah, I have a 4 and a 6-year-old. My son is 4. His name is Grayson. And then I have a 6-year-old, Milani. Obviously I'm divorced, so I have joint custody with my ex, and it's been a real learning experience in the last 2 years with co-parenting. That's something new for both of us, and we've been making the best of it and making it work. And we both get significant amount of time with our children, and my life is, since not just in the last 2 years, since they were born, I would consider myself to have lived somewhat of a selfish life. I didn't have my first child till I was 39 years old. And up until that point, I did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, and that's what I mean by selfish. If I wanted to do something for Roger, I would do it because I didn't answer to anybody else per se. You know what I mean? When you have kids, that perspective has to change. It's not that it should change. It has to change. If you're going to do the right thing and be a good parent, that's for both mom and dad, that perspective has to change. You stop living for you and you start living for them. You know what I mean? So, I'm definitely not the best dad who ever lived, but I do my best, and I try to always be there for them. I think that time is the one commodity that is the most important commodity on planet Earth. There's no price tag on it. So when I have them, I really try to spend time with them. Now, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say that I don't ever give them an iPad or anything like that. That would be lying. But they know if it's nice out or if it's daylight out or we're on the go, we're on the move, we're always doing stuff. We're literally always on the go. I have a small house now. I just have I don't even know, 1,800 square foot ranch or something. I did blow out the backyard and put a beautiful pool in, but I don't like sitting in the house when it's nice out. I want to be out exploring. I'm always hashtagging Explore New Jersey because we're always on the go somewhere. And that's what we like to do. It's all about first for kids. When you're that age, everything's a first. The first time you see something, and you'll never get that memory again. That's going to be captured in your mind forever. So I try to create as many firsts for them as I can. So.
Oh man, that's awesome, because especially in this day and age, where especially that age, like 6 and 4. Those are ideal ages to pop that iPad on their lap and just let them go for hours, right? That thing is like the best babysitter known to man. But
it really is. And again, I'd be a hypocrite to say that I don't let them use it, but I do not abuse it. I don't feel like I abuse it. So,
I mean, it sounds like a big theme of like probably one of your core values is connection and family. And, and just so we're clear, what's the custody agreement between you and Jen? Is it 50-50? Is it 80-20?
It works out to be just about 50-50 at the end. Jenny's primary, but we have joint. So I have them. I mean, I don't really want to give the breakdown, but I have them the majority of weekends and one day during the week. You know what I mean? So,
got it. Yeah. And I've heard you talk on other podcasts that like when they're there, it's like, man, that's your focus, right?
Yeah.
To be honest, man, those are really tough ages. I mean, especially for guys. And like I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old right now. And I also have a 13 and 14-year-old, all boys. And what I found is just keeping it real. It's easy. Like it's easy for me to work, and interact and play and wrestle with the 2 older ones. And it's harder for me to play with the 4-year-old and 7-year-old because their toys are different, that kind of thing. Like I'd rather throw a football than play cars.
Yeah.
So, but it sounds like for you, like you've been pretty creative with like adventures and time and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's easy for anybody. I wouldn't say it's easy for just children in general aren't easy. I wouldn't say it's easy for mom either. I'm sure their mom has her moments with them. And so I don't think it's easy. I'd try to guess steer away from stereotypes and say it's harder from guys. Not that you said that, because, I made a decision early on that I was going to be a hands-on dad. And when I was married, I was a hands-on dad. Jenny worked a lot. She was away a fair amount working at times. And so changing diapers was never an issue. I've always been there. I've always been active in lives. Hard. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some hard days. I mean, no question. They have 2 very different personalities. I've got a daughter. Sometimes it's a little tough to answer some of the questions she has and things, although she's only 6. So hasn't gotten too crazy yet. But but I think that, and again, not to stereotype, but I think that sometimes in divorces, guys don't always fare great with custody. I don't think that is a horrible statement to make. And I knew when we were going through the divorce process that I wasn't just going to accept being an every other weekend dad. There was no way I was going to accept that. No possible way. And I stood my ground, and, in the end, I think we're both comfortable and both happy with how it worked out. I get them a significant amount of time. Mom gets them a significant amount of time. We live roughly 45 minutes apart, and we make it work, so.
That's cool, man. And what have you found has been, I'm fascinated because I'm raising all young men.
Yeah.
What have you found has been some differences in raising a young lady and a young man?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just, I see her growing up so fast. I don't think I've stood up and peed in 5 years, because they don't know what a lock is on a door. They just come running through the bathroom. Nothing slows them down. So I mean, that part of it, of course, I'm always, I keep a towel on standby because you never know if she's coming running in the bathroom and you're in the shower. And I always quickly wrap myself in a towel. So I'd say that is probably one of the most significant differences, because I wouldn't even care if Grayson came in the bathroom. Probably wouldn't bother me at all. But personality wise, there's definitely personality differences, but that's just with 2 kids. It wouldn't matter a boy or a girl. Milani is more my shy one. When we go out, we're always, like I said, always out, always around groups of people. She takes a little bit more to warm up. She's she's a daddy's girl. She's a little bit of a knee hugger. Grayson just bowls in. He doesn't care if there's 40 people. He doesn't care if it's teenage boys playing football. He's in the middle of it. He has zero inhibitions at all. Milani, I have to take her. I know what I have to do. She doesn't even say it. I take her over. I say, Milani, introduce yourself, say your name, and I get her warmed up. And then she's usually good to go. We go to the park a lot. Once she's in there and warmed up and she's made a friend, then I'll just go parking on the park bench and watch them play. And, we'll sit there, and usually I'll pack a lunch and bring it. So I don't know, just, differences of personalities. I'd say Milani's a little more shy, but I don't know that I attribute that to her being a girl. I think it's just a personality trait,
So when she was born, did you have your shotguns like all shined up, ready to go?
I called her, and people still hit me up because it was obviously on air, but I nicknamed her Angel Baby. You know what I mean? I don't know why. I just, the moment I saw her, I was like, you're my little angel baby. I guess because I never really visualized myself as being a dad, but once I saw her, I was like, I know that I'm meant to be a dad. You know what I mean? So, I nicknamed her Angel Baby, and I don't call her that anymore, but people still are like, oh my God, if I post an old picture of her or something, they'll be like, oh my God, there's your Angel Baby, So yeah, it was, she was my first. I didn't have my first until I was 39. So I was a late bloomer. Grayson came along 2 years later. And it's been all good. But I really think everything happens for a reason. I think that for me personally, it worked out well that way. I don't think that I was mature enough or financially stable enough, or for whatever reason, or hadn't met the right girl to have children prior. So, people can say whatever they want. Did we have a messy divorce? Yes, we did. But I have zero regrets for any of it. I wouldn't take one day of it back, because I have those 2 beautiful children out of it. What I mean?
Man, the one thing I want to just acknowledge and appreciate about you, man, is you have a lot of conviction when you talk about them. Like, so for instance, when you're like, I'm going to be a hands-on dad, and you said that like 10 minutes ago, but the way you said it was very direct, and you knew, like, you could tell you meant it. And even when you start to say things here and there, like, okay, I wasn't ready, but now I am, like, just the inflection in your voice. It's like, that you're ready
and
for it.
You couldn't explain that to somebody that doesn't have kids. That would be I wouldn't have understood it prior to having kids. People could have explained that all day to me, and I would have never got it. It's just when they look you in the eye, it's like, what you were put here for.
Yeah.
And how you could ever fail them. I don't know how I could ever fail them. And that's not to say that I don't have bad dad days where I screw up and I do something wrong, or, maybe whatever. Maybe I forgot to do Milani's homework with her or something, That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about on the grand scale of failing them and not being fully committed to being their dad and being there, And there seems to be a tremendous issue with involved dads in today's day and age. And it's such a foregone conclusion for me to understand that, I don't understand why you would not want to be in your kid's life. and why you would ever stop fighting to be in your kid's life, So.
Yeah, man, I know exactly where you're coming from. The thing is that, well, first of all, it's not a bad thing that you waited as long as you did, because you and I are in the same camp when it comes to how late, like with my last two, right? I joke around all the time with my wife, and I'm like, when we go to Lawson and Colton's baseball games, people are going to be looking at us like, is that or is that grandma and grandpa?
Right? Yeah.
So we're going to have to deal with that. But hey, and just a side question, Milani, that is a really cool name. Where'd you guys get that?
Yeah, I got to attribute that to Jenny. When we were picking out names for girls, we would put them in the notes in our phones, and we had a whole list of names we liked. And then Jenny did a show with a girl named, and you'll definitely know the story if you don't know the name, Bethany Hamilton. Do you know the name? She's a 15-year-old surfer. She was about 15, I think, at the time, 13, 15, professional surfer from Hawaii who actually had her arm bit off by a great white shark.
Oh, yeah. So they made that movie about it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So I forget the name of the movie, but yeah, my kids watched it. Anyway, my ex did a show with her, a diving show. And they met, and she's a wonderful girl. Her mom was on the set with her. They're very religious, very God-fearing people, just a wonderful, down-to-earth girl. And one day her mom was there, and they were like eating lunch, and this is, I'm telling this story secondhand. Jenny told this story to me, but they were eating lunch. And the mom said, well, let's pray before we eat. And she said her daughter's full name, Bethany Milani Hamilton. So Jenny said, oh, I love that middle name, and her mother explained the meaning of it. It's Hawaiian, and it means heavenly flower. So when she told me that, I was like, that is a perfect name for a girl. I love it. I love the meaning behind it. I just like how it sounds, so it was from that point on, it was Milani, and there was no turning back. So, yeah.
Man, I like that name. That is a solid, unique name with a good meaning behind it.
Yeah.
As we kind of wrap up here towards the end, I wanted to, Grayson, you and I were talking right before the show, and I know that he's had a diagnosis with autism, and Roger, I can't even tell you how many emails I've gotten, and you're talking to a guy who 3 out of 4 of his boys have some sort of special need going on. So no stranger to that personally. I understand that very uniquely. But so many men are so curious as to like, man, how do I navigate, raising a child whose needs are a bit different than my other kids. So what, I know you've only had Grayson for 4 short years, but just what's some advice that you could give some guys out there?
I'm kind of glad you asked that question, because one of the most asked DMs I get, and I would say 90% of them are from moms, ask me about, whether it be his diet or what we've done with him and it's a very hard question to answer, because as you know, the spectrum is very, very, very broad, very broad. So it's a very tough question. I try to answer it as best I can, but it's almost like you have to answer it generally, because they're a snowflake. No snowflakes are the same, So, I find, he does all the therapies. Grayson has had every OT, DI, speech, ABA, he does ABA every weekend at my house and stuff. He's had all those. He's mild to moderate on the spectrum. I personally never use the term. You'll never see me ever describe him as autistic. You'll never see me talk about him being autistic. And it is certainly because I'm not in denial. I've heard that before. You're in denial of that. Not at all. I'm comfortable with the term. As you've just heard me say, he's diagnosed. It's just that I don't see the benefit or the necessity in it. As long as you're doing all the steps, which I am, he does his ABA here. I personally think that one of the biggest benefits to him is never treating him any different. Everything his sister does, we do together. We go everywhere together. I would fly to California with him tomorrow. Not a question asked. There's not one thing I would not do with him. Now, I'm not saying that same pattern would fit for every child. Clearly it's not. There's different levels to different spectrums. But in no way do I let it limit us, control us, in any way, shape, or form. We do what we want to do. I don't think that his behavior is in any way effective enough so that I wouldn't do anything with him. So we do what we want to do, and he's an amazing, amazing child. We have a very special bond. And I try to help as many people as I can to ask me questions. I get a million different questions about a million different things. Diet is a big one. What is his diet? Did you put him on any kind of special diets? Therapies being another one. And I answer them as best I can, but it's very tough because I don't know their situation. And as you know, no two are the same. There are no two the same. So I know what works for me and I know what works for us. And we do what we do. I do not think that Grayson will have any issues or any problems in his life whatsoever. I would never use the word normal because I fucking hate that word. Excuse my language. What is normal? Are you normal? Am I normal? I would say I'm not normal, So what is normal? So I never use that word normal because I just don't like it. I don't care if other people use it, but he is going to be just fine. He's going to live an amazing life. He's going to make his mom and dad very, very proud. And I have nothing but faith in that little boy. He already makes me proud every day. So.
Man, I'm so glad you went in that direction. I didn't expect you to go in that direction, but let me say something about this real quick. So my oldest son was diagnosed with ADHD, and then slightly on the autism spectrum. He didn't walk or crawl until he was over 2. We had to get him intense occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy before he even hit kindergarten. Yeah. My 13-year-old went through about a two-year point in his life not too long ago. It was between he was 10 and 12, severe depression. And you would never know that by looking at him. He's like straight A student, good looking kid, really built, football player, but just had some demons that he was dealing with. My 7-year-old just got diagnosed with Tourette's, tics. So he does this thing constantly, he twitches. And, we just took the kids to Disney and I noticed like other parents looking at him and that kind of thing, making comments. But here's the cool thing. I'm so glad you said what you did because I learned that same lesson. I'm so glad I did when my oldest was 4. And I'll never forget, it came from not the most expected place. So my stepmother, I was like, Ethan's got ADHD and autism. He's got low muscle tone. He's got sensory integration issues. And she's like, be very careful with how you label him. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I don't know how many more kids you're going to have. She's like, but every kid is going to have a label and be very careful with those labels because what happens is your labels will become their reality.
It will carry throughout their life.
And I was like, I don't know what it was about that, but I was like, okay, yeah. So we'll get him his therapies and all that good stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But he is going to be treated and he's going to be given the same opportunities with his sports and his school and all these other things as every other kid. And he is just our son. He's not our son with X. He's our son.
100%.
And to be honest, man, out of 650 episodes, and we've talked about this topic before, I've never heard somebody say it like that. And I'm so glad you did. So thank you.
I'm not going to be easy on him because he has a diagnosis. I'm not going to be one of these participation ribbon dads. He needs to be challenged and he will be challenged and he's going to be better off for it. And he can overcome those challenges. Not only is he going to play sports and not only is he going to compete and do all these things, he's going to be good at it because dad's going to pressure him just like I would anybody else. I'm not saying he's got to be the best. If he came in last, I'd be waiting but as long as he does his best and pushes himself and he will,
Yeah, man. I love that. And, I think with that limited thinking that I had, beforehand, before hearing what you just said, but I learned that 10 years ago, my 14-year-old now, like they always said, he's never going to live a normal life. He's always going to struggle in school.
That word normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have such a crutch with that word. I don't know. I just don't like the word normal because I truly don't know what it means. I don't know you. It's the first time we've ever met, but I don't know that I would define you as normal. I certainly wouldn't define me as normal. So why should I hold my son to that expectation of being normal? I don't want him to be normal, to be quite honest with you. I want him to be different, Well, what is that? What is David Goggins? What is his quote that I love? Be uncommon amongst uncommon men. I mean, I think that, you want to be your own person. You don't want to be normal. You don't want to blend in with the crowd. I don't want either one of my kids to be normal,
Yeah, it's not, that's not who changes the world.
Right.
It's not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Man, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. This has been a lot of fun. As far as, as you look out to 2021, I know 2020 has really dealt a lot of us a lot of uncertainty. What's got you most excited about this year?
Man, I don't want to get into politics because that's a crazy, crazy thing. But I believe in my heart that in 2021, and I'll give my dad some accolades and some props on this, that good is going to prevail in 2021. I'll just leave it at that. Good is going to prevail. I think that humanity, no matter what your belief is, no matter left, right, black, white, purple, no matter what you believe, humanity has to come together in 2021. Has to. Otherwise, we're legitimately doomed and we may be done. So I don't think there is any other choice than that. And I believe that good always prevails, and I think it will happen.
I like that, man. I like that outlook. Yeah. I feel like we can only go up from here after all the chaos that's been going on. So, man, this has been really refreshing. I want to give you obviously an opportunity to talk about your podcast with Frankie, everything that you guys have going on, so the men who are listening can find you guys. Yeah, guys, check us out. We every week we drop an episode. Sometimes we drop 2 episodes a week. Our podcast is called Champ and the Tramp. It is me. Somehow I got the label The Tramp. I don't know how Frankie came up with the name, but he is the champ. Frankie Edgar, UFC lightweight champ, now fighting at 135. But we do a podcast every week. It's kind of open format. We talk about a little bit of everything. We have a lot of fighters on. We have a lot of non-fighters on. So far, we have not gone to Zoom. We're all live in studio guests, but I think just with times being what they are, we will probably be doing some Zoom interviews soon. So who knows? Maybe we'll have you on, brother. Hey, man, I'd welcome it. I'm not afraid to fly, Yeah, bro. Okay. I keep myself healthy. I mean, I don't know if I keep myself healthy enough to get in the ring with Frankie, but, I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't gotten sick yet. So, yeah, same. Yeah, me either. So. Well, Roger, hey guys, don't worry about it. We'll have all the links in the show notes for you. Not a problem. So go to gooddadproject.com/306 for this particular episode. Again, gooddadproject.com/306. Roger, man, this has been a pleasure. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. And it's crazy, man, because like the couple that we always would have them over to watch, I was like, hey, we saw him on Saturday. I was like, never guess who I'm interviewing on Monday. She's like, who? I was like, Roger Mathews. She's like, from Jersey Shore. I was like, yep. She's like, oh, it's crazy. It's so funny. So yeah, it's because that was like my life, like every week watching. I'd like to think I'm transitioning into the new phase of my life and I'm not that Guido dude from Jersey Shore anymore, but I'll forever be that guy. Let's be honest. Yeah, man. No, this has been a pleasure, man. So seriously, wish you the best of luck. This was so much fun. And especially, man, just, I want to honor you once again for that last segment. I mean, that was gold, man. Guys who are raising kids, with special needs, they needed to hear that. And thank you for bringing that. Yeah, of course, man. It's becoming more and more prevalent all the time. It seems to be, it's definitely increasing in numbers. So I think more people, men and women, need to do their due diligence and their homework on it. And it could happen to anybody. And you have to figure out how you're going to handle it and what type of parent you're going to be and how you're going to perceive the situation that landed in your lap, because it's not going away. And you have to handle it as best you can. And that's all any parent can do, Totally agree, man. Totally agree. Again, man, so unexpected. I'm glad we went there, and I'm glad you were transparent. Like, I know this is not easy stuff to talk about. So thanks for your transparency. Yeah, man. There's no question you can't ask me, man. You know what I mean? Like, you don't grow if you don't learn from your mistakes and your problems. And unfortunately, some of my biggest mistakes were aired out but you learn from them. So, Yeah. That's all right. You're publicly learning. That's the only difference, right? That's it. Yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on. Like I said, guys, you can find everything at gooddadproject.com/306. Roger, you the man. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on, bro. I really enjoyed it. You bet.